The Washington Commanders are clearly all in on their 2024 roster after making a big trade.
The Pittsburgh Steelers were quite active on the trade deadline, adding two pieces, one on offense, one on defense.
The Dallas Cowboys made a big trade before the NFL deadline.
So one superstar returns and one is going to not.
Shohei Ohtani got surgery.
The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
The first ever 12-team playoff rankings are here. Oregon is number 1.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks.
Oregon is number 1 in the college football playoff rankings, which, if you want my full thoughts on those, go check out today's episode of Locked On College Football. I have many thoughts. I think it's ridiculous that Indiana's number 8. Completely ridiculous. Completely absurd. It's not absurd that Oregon's number 1. They've got what is now a top 2 win in the eyes of the playoff committee over Ohio State, as the Buckeyes are number 2. They've won the rest of their games. The Idaho game is a distant memory because Oregon's steamrolling everyone. I think they will do that again to Maryland this weekend at Autzen Stadium. Terps have got a pretty solid offense. At least that's what the numbers have said so far. If you got questions about them, by all means, let me know. I'll have a crossover with Locked On Maryland tomorrow on the show. But I think for Oregon, the question comes up, who cares? Why? Because Dan Lanning said at a press conference when they got to number 1 in the AP polls. And I'm sure if he was asked about the college football playoff first edition rankings, he'd say, who cares? Who cares? So I care a little bit. I care a little bit. Not so much about these rankings specifically, but about the idea of Oregon grabbing the number 1 seed in the 12-team playoff. Now, there are a couple of different calculations that you can look at, and we see this in the NFL playoffs, which is what this structure very closely resembles, much to my chagrin, but that's okay. It could have been anyway, not going down that particular rabbit hole today because people get too upset about it, but that's all right. We'll save it for another show. Oregon getting the number 1 seed or just getting any sort of bye does have inherent value. Now, there is also a caveat to that. When you're the number 1 overall seed, there's a target on your back. The good news for Oregon, Dan Lanning has brought this up, or at least from what we've seen on Ducks versus them, it's reasonable to infer he's brought it up other times as well throughout the last couple of weeks. When you assume that position of being the number 1 team in the country, you get that target on your back, but there's a different sort of pressure. There's a different sort of pressure. It feels different when you know, hey, everybody else thinks we're good enough to win the national championship. You can tune out the outside noise all you want, but this is a really, I think, underrated but difficult aspect of being a good head coach. How do you keep your team mission-oriented? And I think Dan Lanning has done an exceptional job of that, not just this season, but last year's as well. Remember, he's never lost, knock on wood, to an unranked team since being named Oregon's head coach ahead of the 2022 season. I don't see that changing this year. Now, that's first angle. Second angle is the playoff value, because if you're a top 4 seed, number 1, you have to be a conference champion. So if Oregon gets to the Big Ten championship game, which they absolutely should, they have to win it in order to get a bye in the first round. Then the question becomes, well, what's the value of that particular bye? You see teams that get byes in the NFL all the time. The Ravens have done it a couple times in recent years, but they're not the only team that's fallen victim to it. Sorry to my guy Richie Bradshaw, Locked On Sun Devils, who's a big Ravens fan, but it's just the team that popped in my mind. They've had byes and it doesn't go very well. Do you want to have that bye, or do you want to have played the week prior? You have that back and forth of, do you want to be rusty maybe for the first half quarter, or do you feel like if you have that extra week of rest, it's going to benefit your team? Well, for Oregon, it looks right now like having an extra week of rest in the playoff picture would be pretty beneficial. So yeah, who cares for this particular iteration of the rankings? It's a semi-historic moment that the rankings came out and Oregon's number 1. Last time Oregon, and here's the good omen that I mentioned, the last time that there was a new playoff structure, 2014, and Oregon was a part of the first of something. Now, this is just an initial rankings, of course, but Oregon was a part of the first ever 14 playoff. They made the national championship. So if you're looking for a good omen, that's certainly one of them. Not the only indicator or the primary indicator that Oregon can win it all this year, But I know that some fans are superstitious like that. It's me. I am superstitious and weird like that. But of course it matters not. But that particular question of how valuable is that first round bye to Oregon? How valuable is Tez Johnson to this offense? We're going to find out this week against Maryland. They've had some games this year where they've given up a hefty number of points. Their defense is nowhere on the same level as Michigan's. This is a team that lost to Michigan State, who Oregon, of course, long ago was able to beat pretty handily at Austin Stadium. I expect that to be the case again this week when the Terrapins come to town for a classic Big Ten matchup in which they're flying all the way across the country, which is something they also have working against them. Teams that are traveling 2 or more time zones this year, I don't think they have a great overall record. I don't think they have a great record against the spread. And Oregon covered last week. They had a slow start to the year against the spread, but they've started to pick it up. And you know what they say, good teams win. Great teams cover. Oregon covered last week. That makes them a great football team by default. But we will get a glimpse this weekend of how valuable Tez Johnson is or how needed he is for the Oregon offense. I think we got a pretty darn good glimpse of it last week. And Dillon Gabriel, I think this is the most crucial stretch of Dillon Gabriel's tenure as Oregon's quarterback to date. You lose your leading receiver. And I talked earlier this week on the show, I feel really good about the replacement options. I think you'll see more Evan Stewart, a lot more Evan Stewart, and about the same Justice Lowe from the last couple of weeks, and Trayshawn Holden, and Holden could see a little bit of a bump as well, and you'll see him continue to use the tight ends, Terrence Ferguson and Patrick Herbert and Kenyon Sadiq, all of whom have caught passes this year in Oregon's offense, and I think have done a really good job. You're going to see that, but for a multi-week stretch, if the passing game is going to stay at the same level, then Gabriel has to continue performing at that same level. He's got to make the wide receivers better versions of themselves, rather than the receivers helping him out at times. I don't think that either one of those, groups or individuals has, carried the other. I don't think Gabriel's carried the receivers. I don't think the receivers have carried Dillon Gabriel per se. But when you lose a guy who's leading your team in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns, however capable the guys behind him are, it's going to be different. And so the ability for this offense to have success starts with Dillon Gabriel. It doesn't start with the offensive line. I know what the receivers can do, but it's the onus, I think, primarily is on Dillon Gabriel here to showcase, okay, Tez isn't here right now, but we can still make these plays. And every now and then, yeah, you'd love to see a 50-50 contested catch from Evan Stewart or lassoing that ball with his hand in the back of the end zone where I'm pretty sure he got 2 feet down. It was a crazy catch. There's a photo of it out there that was going around the internet that's really sick as well. But for Oregon going after that first round bye, I think there is some value in it. This offense is at its best when Tez Johnson is there. It can still be really good without Tez Johnson. But if you're telling me that Oregon's playing Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game or a playoff team in the quarterfinals that has a big-time defense or in the semifinals or whenever, I'd much rather have Tez Johnson on the field. And by the way, make of this whatever you will, but the analytics and the betting market don't think Oregon holds on to that number 1 spot. We shall see. ESPN gives Oregon a 22% chance to keep the number 1 overall seed, meaning they think there's a 22% chance that Oregon wins each of its next 4 games, because if they were to win all those 4, no one would be able to knock them off. FanDuel has got the Big Ten title odds dead even. Dead even. I think that's a slight overreaction and a sensing of what the public maybe feels about Ohio State. Like, oh, they're back. They went on the road to beat Penn State. Really good win. Really good win. But remember, Ohio State got 7 points they shouldn't have. Oregon was sloppy in a number of areas. Ohio State didn't play perfectly, to be sure. That Big Ten title game right now, if it's Oregon, Ohio State, that feels like a toss-up to me.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And that winning $5 bet could be on an NBA matchup. Tonight, the Sixers head west to face the Clippers, and the spread is teeny tiny. FanDuel has the Clippers favored by just 1.5 points. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
The Washington Commanders are clearly all in on their 2024 roster after making a big trade.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Perfectly, David. He's going to be a perfect fit for that type of system. That's exactly what he was asked to do here in New Orleans by former head coach, former defensive coordinator, Dennis Allen. The Saints' brand of football over on the defensive side was very press man coverage heavy. It was all about physicality. And Marshon was one of the better run support corners in the NFL. I was talking about it earlier. I think that Dan Quinn's going to love Marshon Lattimore just because of how active he is in run support alone. But the other thing that he does very well is that like he hustles, he tussles with those big quintessential X style receivers, the big bodied guys. That's exactly who Marshon Lattimore loves to match up against, loves the physicality. It's a big part of his game.
Yeah, and you talk about tussles, right? Fortunately for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they've already played the Washington Commanders this season,
that's right.
So they don't have to worry about a Mike Evans, Marshon Lattimore duel there in burgundy and gold instead of gold and black. But the other part, so you talk about the press man coverage thing, and I think that's a really big part of the inspiration here, right? We haven't talked to Adam Peters, the GM, or Dan Quinn, the coach, yet since the trade has been made, but I anticipate that's going to be a part of this because gradually through the season, you've seen the Washington Commanders shift to more of a zone defense, more zone than you expect them to be, and they certainly were early on. I think part of that is, one, they're getting beat. Two, they're not getting a lot of ball production. They're not getting a lot of takeaways, and you're not getting takeaways. What you got to do is bend, don't break, right? Make those teams make mistakes, make them kick field goals, do all those things. Now with Marshon, though, I know he hasn't had an interception this season, but he's had an interception every season of his career so far, and assuming he gets one here this year with Washington, that streak will continue. How is that ball hawking show up on the field? Like, what is it that Marshon does that allows him to take advantage of opposing quarterbacks?
Yeah, look, he's not the type of corner that like runs a route for a wide receiver, but he is the type of corner that will beat you to the catch point. He will. He's got really good closing speed, and he'll use that closing speed sometimes to bait quarterbacks into throwing his way. He also does a very good job of crashing down on in or out breaking routes and finding the right angle. His angle on the football is typically pretty safe and sound. And so I think that those are places where he does that. It's a natural ability thing that allows him to be able to kind of turn on the jets and then be able to undercut some passes and things like that. But really, the thing about Marshon Lattimore is that he doesn't get a lot of takeaways because typically he's forcing quarterbacks to throw to the other guys. So really the idea here is that you get a Marshon Lattimore to make the opposing quarterback hold on to the football a little bit longer, move forward in the progressions, have to throw at somebody else, but also have to throw at somebody else half a second later, a full second later, which could be enough time for that pass to come out under pressure. It could be enough time for that pass to come out ill-timed. Could be enough time for that pass to come out at the wrong angle or not being able to throw to the right spot. That's where Marshon Lattimore's lockdown kind of moniker comes from, is his ability to not be targeted, force that quarterback to move through the progressions, given the pass rush time to get home, or maximizing the opportunity for takeaways elsewhere on the defense.
Yeah, you basically erase an entire route, right, in the progression, like you said, by just having him over there, and that, in some ways, I talked about it here earlier. In some ways, that's gonna put more pressure on guys like Benjamin St-Juste, who's not known as the greatest takeaway artist, but hey, look, time to earn your money when you're over there, and the Washington Commanders obviously have been a big surprise to people. I don't think anybody, if we go back to August, nobody's going to predict that in the beginning of November they're going to steal a Dallas Cowboys term all in on building, turning their roster into a championship caliber roster at this point in the season. But that's what they've done. And part of what's allowed them to do that is what they call this brotherhood and this standard that the players themselves have set inside the locker room of doing your job, communicating, playing smart assignment football. How is Marshon going to fold into this Washington Commanders room that really is built all about everybody doing what's best for everybody, not what's best for the individual?
Yeah, that might be the one place where there might be a little bit of a disconnect. Marshon Lattimore is very much kind of a loner. He's kind of the guy that is the top guy, and he kind of works off by himself. I've heard a lot of stories from former and present Saints defensive backs talking about those defensive backs kind of being in the cafeteria and like grabbing lunch together or something like that. And Marshon's still out on the field working. That's probably there's worse things to be than a hard worker, of course, everything like that. So I'm not trying to say anything negative about where Marshon is, but I don't know how other players sometimes take to that when there is sort of this brotherhood community kind of, kumbaya session that could be going on. And Marshon might not be a part of that because he's out on the field and things like that. So that might be where there could be a little bit of a disconnect. But I think that he doesn't do those things, in my experience and from what I've been told, as a means of separating himself from his teammates. He's just got a ridiculous work ethic. And that's kind of the way that he carries himself. So I could see a little bit of the maybe adjustment having to be made before he's really playing along with that. But if you notice some distance between him and the other guys, it's not out of lack of interest. It's that he just is a hard worker. And he's a guy that relies a lot more on natural ability than talent, or excuse me, natural talent than fundamentals and basics and things like that. And so if you're going to do that, you have to be at the top of your game at all times. And I think that's part of that drive.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a great point to make. Like if you're gonna live off of that athletic ability better be top shelf. And certainly when Marshon is on the field, it appears to be just that. And this group's going to love the hardworking attitude. I don't know that they need to go bowling to be successful on the field. I think they'll be okay. Hopefully with that. Now let's talk about availability, right? And Ross Jackson, host of Locked On Saints, as well as I do, our boss of the network, NFL channel coordinator Ross Jackson, hates when we bury the lead, but availability, the most important ability, might be the most important thing here for Marshon. So hopefully that guy can forgive us for talking about it here in the interview. But let's talk about the injury concerns, right? Because a lot of people, a lot of Commanders fans, when these rumors start spinning up and we kind of start talking like, hey guys, this might be an actual thing, kind of start saying like, look how many games this guy has missed. What kind of context can you provide to us about the amount of time that Marshon has missed over the last couple, 2-3 seasons?
Yeah, I would say that the present injury that he's dealing with, which is a hamstring injury that sidelined him for 2 games plus 2 halves of games, also 2 second halves of separate games, is something to keep an eye out on. He does have a history with hamstring injuries throughout his collegiate time and stuff like that. So that is definitely something to keep an eye out on. The 2022 injury, however, this is an injury that took place where Marshon Lattimore sprinted to the opposite side of the field to get in on a play and try to stop a touchdown pass in the end zone that he had no business being a part of because he was on almost the opposite side of the field. He dove to make the play, came down hard, and lacerated his kidney. And I think I said over on Locked On Saints, there's no amount of weightlifting that you're going to be doing, Monday through Friday or Monday through Saturday to get ready for a Sunday game to keep your kidney from being lacerated. So it was a bit of a fluke injury. Last year in 2023, he was rolled up on. That's not an injury-prone thing. That happens to a lot of players. So I really pushed back against the injury-prone tag that Marshon started to gather here in New Orleans. But the hamstring injury in particular is still something to watch. But I don't know how much better that hamstring injury gets when he's in a winning situation as opposed to a losing situation. And then with that threshold of, yes, I'm willing to play through this, becomes at that time. Because I know if I was in his shoes, I'm willing to play through a little bit more discomfort if I'm playing for a team that's winning games. I'm not willing to push further than I need to for a team that's losing games. That's just me. That's why I don't play football. That's why I talk in front of a microphone. But if something like that happens for Marshon Lattimore and all of a sudden he's in a better situation, then maybe that threshold is slightly different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what, and we've all kind of pointed that. We'll see obviously what happens, right? But you feel like the Washington Commanders, even the Kansas City Chiefs who are in on this conversation, like they're not going to go look at a guy and have a serious conversation about trading for a guy who may not be able to play, because clearly that's what you're going to want him to be able to do. So we're all kind of hoping
doing that specifically.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
The Pittsburgh Steelers were quite active on the trade deadline, adding 2 pieces, one on offense, one on defense.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast.
Let's talk about the first move, and that's to get wide receiver Mike Williams from the Jets. Now, it was well reported from Adam Schefter, Jordan Schultz, all the people around the country that the Steelers have been trying to get a wide receiver for some time. They were trying to get Christian Kirk. They were trying to get this guy. They're trying to get that guy. They were trying to get Mike Williams. But they ultimately weren't pulling it out, and for different reasons. One, Cooper Kupp was a target that they might have been interested in. He ended up, just Rams were like, nope, we're not trading him because we won a game, and now we're competitive. We might win the NFC West because everyone's either 4-5 or 5-4 there. Guys like Brandon Ayuk, who they didn't trade for, and that was just a move the Niners decided to keep. He's out for the season. But other guys like Christian Kirk, who I think was the big name that they were really waiting for, broke his collarbone. He's out for the season. So he's done. And so he's out of the equation. So the Steelers looking around, the rumor mill says they try to get Darius Slayton. The Giants wanted too much with him. So they trade a 5th round pick to get Mike Williams. Now, if you don't know who Mike Williams is, there might be some excitement because this is a former 7th overall pick in the 1st round in 2017. But he's highly underperformed his 7th overall pick as a guy. And this is a guy I watched at Clemson. I thought he was phenomenal in college. I thought that he would translate well in the NFL. He did not. He was rarely consistent, if ever consistent. He has 2 1,000-yard seasons under his belt. I believe this is his 8th year in the league. But he's a bigger-bodied wide receiver. At 6'4", 218, still can run down the field. Does have some knee injuries that he has to worry about. But I think the big thing here is that the structure of what he get, and we've talked about this with both Nick Farabaugh and Alan Saunders on the Locked On Steelers podcast for months now. The question was, what kind of receiver would the Steelers get to add to their offense? Because George Pickens is an outside guy who can play in the slot if you really want to. He could kind of line up anywhere. But the Steelers have multiple slot guys. Van Jefferson, really more of a stronger slot player. Calvin Austin, more of the faster slot player. Scotty Miller, more of the quicker slot player. So they have all these slot guys, and Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin can line up on the outside, but that's not their forte. Mike Williams is all about that. That is what he does. Now, he's not going to beat you with precise route running. That's not his MO, but he goes up and gets the football, which, as we know, that's what Russell Wilson likes to do. He likes to throw those calculated deep ball, those moon balls that he throws up high, comes down, and he hopes that his receivers come down with it. He puts the ball in favorable spots for them to come down with it. We've seen George Pickens do that. That's what Mike Williams' MO is. And here's the thing. I don't think Mike Williams is a game breaker for the Steelers. Like, the Steelers aren't trading for that. And if you're thinking that he is, dispel that myth right now. That's just not going to happen. But what I do think Mike Williams, can bring to the Steelers offense is a bigger player who can get down the field, be the vertical threat, and make the occasional contested catch that can move drives in tough situations. And if he can do that, that's depth that the Steelers can add to their roster, that they can move around. And now they can play a little bit more with formations. It allows them to kind of put defenses in situations. All right, who are you going to cover? You're going to shade to pick inside. Guess what? If you leave one-on-one with Mike Williams, he's a bigger guy. And if you have a smaller corner, not a lot of corners, I don't know too many corners that are 6'4". I don't know if any corners are really 6'4". But if you have a smaller corner on him, and that's your number 2 guy, you might be able to get a good jump ball situation with him. And if he pulls that down, great. And again, doesn't mean it's always going to happen. Doesn't mean it's an immediate fix. But this is the answer for depth that the Steelers were looking for. And if you've been listening to the Locked On Steelers podcast, as I hope you have been, or watching it on YouTube, you've known that I've been saying, like, hey, I don't know if they need to go out and make this blockbuster trade for a wide receiver, but this was more of the compensation I was talking about here. A 5th round pick, when they have 2 5th round picks, that's more up the alley of what the Steelers are looking at here. And I think that them getting a guy like this shows, hey, they believe in the structure of their offense. They believe that their offensive line is going to continue to get better. They believe that Russell Wilson's going to get more in sync with this offense. George Pickens going to find that synchronization with him. Calvin Austin, who I think, again, gets open a lot more than people realize. Pat Freiermuth, Donnell Washington, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, Cordell Patterson, who, by the way, will be back, and we'll talk about him in a bit here. But looking at all those different options, Mike Williams is just now a puzzle piece that they can place into and complicate things for opposing defenses a little bit more to add to the balance the Steelers want to strike. Again, the Steelers are a middle-of-the-road offense in the NFL, and that's all that this offense was supposed to be for years while they were rebuilding it to get to the point to kind of buttress the Steelers defense that they want to be at the top of the league. Steelers defense still at the top of the league right now. They still have improvements to make, and we'll talk about the Preston Smith edition and what it does for that. But I think that that's the thing about Mike Williams, is that him being a puzzle piece helps them towards their ultimate goal. It's not the one piece that's exciting there. It's the sum of all the parts together, and he just adds to that sum in a unique way that might boost production for other guys. And here's the thing. It's not going to do it right away, because defenses are going to come out and say, oh, we got to double cover Mike Williams because the Steelers just traded for him. But you know what they're going to do? They might still double cover George Pickens on a deep ball, and on one side of the field, and on the other, you get a one-on-one with Mike Williams. And if Russell Wilson, and he's been very efficient in throwing the deep ball this year, one of the most efficient passers in the NFL in a very small sample size, but that's what his MO was last year. It's what it is this year. If you hit 2 to 3 bombs to Mike Williams, and I'm not talking 80-yard touchdowns, but I'm talking 30, 20, 25, 30-yard gains where it's one-on-one, he throws it up, and it hurts you like that. Defenses are going to have to respect that, and then it's going to make them play a little bit more 2 deep safety looks, and then all of a sudden the box opens up, and when the box opens up, the run opens up, or you can get them more in play action. The middle of the field opens up. Those things can become part of it, and that's where I think Mike Williams, as a puzzle piece, fits what Omar Khan wanted to do, fits what Arthur Smith wants to do, and fits what Mike Tomlin wants to do, and fits what Russell Wilson might be able to do well with this offense. We are going to talk about this other move, this Preston Smith. The Steelers traded away a 7th round pick for him, not a high spend, but a good player to add to the defense. Now, if you're looking at his size and you're thinking, wait a second, is he a linebacker or is he a defensive end? My answer is yes, because he kind of does both. But in the Steelers system, I think he will be purely an edge rusher, more of like a big edge rusher. He is 6'5", 265. He's a former 2nd round pick by Washington. He's been with the Packers. He's actually signed a pretty decent deal with them. But he is sort of that big edge rusher that they'll line up at outside linebacker, probably in more of their four-man down sets, like shot when they're in dime or nickel. And he can be an edge rusher depth piece and a puzzle piece, much like Mike Williams is an offense. Now, I think what they're trying to do here, what Omar Khan's trying to get here, and it's funny because people saw this move and they're like, why they get another edge rusher? Mike Tomlin said something very interesting during the Tuesday press conference, and I didn't have time to clip it up because I've been busy writing Pitt and doing all the trade stuff and getting other things done for the Post-Gazette. We'll have a show with Wade Fittipaldo to later today as well on the Post-Gazette North Shore Drive podcast. Go check that out. But looking at Preston Smith and what he brings, he is that 4th piece to the edge rusher room that the Steelers thought they could get out of Marcus Golden. I actually think he's better than Marcus Golden for what he brings to the table because of his size. But Preston Smith is a physical run defender first guy who can rush the passer. You look at what he's done in previous years. He has been able to get sacks. I think he had 8 and 8.5 sacks in 2022 and 2023 before he was kind of relegated a little bit in the system. And I want you to hear out Peter Bukowski, who has an interesting breakdown for how Preston Smith fits into what the Steelers could do here, because when you look at Preston Smith, he's not going to take away snaps from TJ Watt. He's not going to take away snaps from Alex Highsmith. But what he will do, in my opinion, is when you look at the difference between him and Nick Herbig, remember, he's small, he's quick, he's agile, he's beating you with his hands, he's beating with his feet, he's trying to get around you more than he's trying to run through you. And even though he is explosive, Preston Smith is the opposite of that. And that's not to say that he's slow and lethargic, but he's big and physical, and he'll turn back the run, and he'll be able to peel off the edge guys. If you look at some of the tape that he does when he's blocked, when a tight end tries to block him, good luck to you. When an offensive tackle tries to block him, it better be a good offensive tackle because he's a big fella. And the thing is about him is he's your 4th guy. He's a rotational guy. You're not asking him to go out there and start. You're not asking him out there to take away big snaps from Alex Highsmith. You're saying, hey, be the guy that gives the breather to Alex Highsmith, to TJ Watt. And then here's the thing. When you have Herbig and Preston Smith, like we were saying with Mike Williams, those are chess pieces now, because now you can throw. We talked about how last week coming out of the Giants game that Preston Smith, how Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt started to rotate sides just a little bit, and the challenges that it gave the Giants, and it led to TJ Watt's strip sack because he was left one-on-one on that side. Now you have a quick guy, a fast guy that comes off the bench, and a big, strong guy. And now you can flip those guys around and further confuse guys. But listen to Peter Bukowski. He does a great job covering the Packers for Locked On Packers. He has some thoughts on Preston Smith.
I'm Peter Bukowski, host of Locked On Packers. Preston Smith with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The problem with Preston Smith in Green Bay is, number one, Brian Gutekunst is a little bit like Leonardo DiCaprio, and maybe not at 25, but maybe at 30, he starts to go, I'm losing interest. And that is the situation here for the Packers. He wasn't a great scheme fit with Jeff Hafley in this move to the 4-3, was a better stand-up outside linebacker in Joe Barry's 3-4 defense. If you're a Packers fan and you're in the know, you'll know that the joke is that he was also one of the Packers' best cornerbacks because he famously got locked up with Devontae Adams, with Justin Jefferson, in some unfortunate coverage situations with Joe Barry. This move was something we saw coming over the last few weeks when his playing time was well down, even though he was the stated and technical starter, didn't even play 50% of snaps against the Lions. His playing time has been cut down each of the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, as I think this was where we were headed. He's still a player who I think can be a situational player for a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, who is not going to need him to play every snap, who can give them some nice pass rush, who can take the pressure off of TJ Watt and give them another look. He's a big, long, physical player. And I didn't want to lead with this, though maybe it's the most important thing. This is a locker room ace. He is going to be a leader in that locker room from the jump, someone who has been in big playoff games, has been part of a really good organization with a really good coaching staff in Green Bay. He is going to know right away what the standard is and come in and play to it, hold guys accountable, and be a part of the winning culture already established with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I thought when I heard that the Packers were taking calls on Preston Smith, that it made sense for a team that needed a culture infusion to get him. Someone like, could they go get Jadeveon Clowney and swap them? Just be a locker room presence in a way that maybe Clowney isn't for the Carolina Panthers. I don't know. I'm not in that locker room. This is the perfect fit as well, because it's someone who you know is going to come in and be that guy for you right away. Do I think it changes everything about this defense? No, not at all. But it is insurance, and you can never have too much pass rush. I think this is just a Packers team. They wanted to get more snaps for Lucas Van Ness. And again, Van Ness is a better fit for how this Packers defense wants to play than Preston Smith was. Plus, he's a part of the future of this team, and Preston Smith probably wasn't going to be.
So there you have it. Very well put by Peter Bukowski. The Steelers getting a depth, a starter from another team who kind of got pushed out by a young guy, but is not nearly as old as, you know, some other people out there that are like, you know, 33 and 34 years old. Preston Smith, 30, you know, he'll turn 32 in just a couple of weeks. But he's not, you know, 34, 35 years old. He's not Cam Hayward age, so he can get you a year or two of solid depth. And that's where the Steelers are getting him. And I think that is a solid piece there. And another part that Peter brings up that I don't have any knowledge of, so I'm just parroting what he's saying here, but him saying he's a locker room guy, I think that's very important to the Steelers. Whereas the defense isn't where they really need the locker room guy in. They need more on the offense, because the defense has the locker room guys. Cam Hayward, Minka Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, all of them guys. They're locker room dudes. They got the culture. But he adds in another guy that can just simply be the depth, a supporter, a sort of a sergeant, if you will, a guy that can lead the soldiers, but not from the front. You need guys like that. And I think that's where him coming in, being a guy that fits into the culture really well, being a guy that's physical and helps with the run defense, which is something they need help with. And if you look back, I truly think a lot of the problems the Steelers have come up against the run is when they run away from TJ Watt when Alex Highsmith is not on the field, or run away from Alex Highsmith when TJ Watt is not on the field. And I think that's been part of the problem. You can even go back to, I think it was the Colts game, I think it was, when Nick Herbig was getting caught unawares at times. And I think he's erased some of those mistakes in the run game. But Preston Smith is going to bring the experience, the know-how, the physicality to not make those mistakes. And now when Watt and Highsmith are off the field, you're not sweating as much with Jeremiah Moon out there. And that's no shade to Jeremiah Moon. He's a good practice squad player, but Preston Smith ain't a practice squad player that you're hoping plays better. He's a veteran who's coming in, knows what he's have to do. You say, hey, sick him. And you know how Mike Tomlin likes to say, he's like, I'd rather say whoa than have to say sick him. So he just says, hey, go and get those guys. That's who I think Preston Smith is. And again, like Mike Williams, he's not going to be the game changer. He might help change some games because he's a part of the puzzle, but that's just it. It's all about the bigger picture, the bigger puzzle that the Steelers are putting together on both sides of the ball. They've had the number 2 scoring defense coming into their bye week, and granted, that defense got weaknesses that they need to shore up, and we've talked about on this show. But adding a depth piece up front in the edge rusher, it helps give them some more support in an area where we were starting to wonder, are they getting a little weak there in the run? Now maybe they'll be a little bit better.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And that winning $5 bet could be on an NBA matchup. Tonight, the Sixers head west to face the Clippers, and the spread is teeny tiny. FanDuel has the Clippers favored by just 1.5. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch, and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
The Dallas Cowboys made a big trade before the NFL deadline.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast.
Let's discuss the compensation. The Cowboys give up a 2025 fourth-round pick. They get back Mingo in a seventh. What are your reactions on the trade?
It was too much. I think it was around too much, right? Like, I think, and it's not just because, you have all those fifth rounders, right? And that you didn't necessarily want to give up a fourth. It felt like, considering he isn't going to be much of a contributor this season, and you don't really know. I mean, he will contribute in some way, but he won't be like necessarily a playmaker. I hope. Hopefully he will be, but I don't think it's fair to anticipate that this season. And you don't really know what you're getting beyond that. I think it should have been more of a flyer than it was, right?
Yeah.
I think that Carolina took advantage of the fact that Jerry wanted to make something happen, and he probably kicked it up half a round more than he should have. And ultimately that's the compensation we got. Look, the Cowboys are getting a 7th round pick back from this, but ultimately it's it's like a pick swap in some ways, but not really, because I mean the difference between the 4th and the 7th is pretty serious. And I just think that for even with the devalued level of late round picks, I just think it was a little bit rich for a guy that you're not getting too much guarantees of a contribution. And that's still keeping in mind that the Cowboys traded a 4th round pick for a backup quarterback who we've yet to see play. So
yeah, exactly. Let's actually start with that. There's a big difference between this trade and the Trey Lance trade, because I know everybody's I've seen some terrible tweets about, hey, the Cowboys have given up 4th round picks and guys that won't play. Jonathan Mingo is going to play one way or another this year. Yeah. He's played like 100 special team snaps this year. He could play right away, even if it's only on special teams. Now, is it ideal to trade away a 4th round pick for a special teams player? Absolutely not. But that's the difference, where Trey Lance is buried on your bench as an inactive player each week. Mingo is going to help you one way or another. There's also a difference in cost control, right? The Cowboys got 2 years out of Trey Lance. They're getting 2.5 out of Jonathan Mingo. So there's a little bit of a difference there. I also agree with you that they overpaid. I think if this was a 5th round pick and the Cowboys give up one of their 4 5th round picks to get Mingo in a 7th, nobody's batting an eye, right? But this is not the same as trading for DeAndre Hopkins on a 1-year rental when you're paying him $7 million a year. It's not the same as Amari Cooper, who's on a 1-year deal that you're trading a 3rd round pick for, like the Bills did. Deontay Johnson, the NFL just does not want Deontay Johnson in their locker room, and that's why he's bounced around the league so much. Teams couldn't give him away any cheaper over the last 2 years. Again, all of this to say that the Cowboys have overpaid for Mingo. But I do want to talk about the devaluing of day 3 picks, because it seems like day 3 picks have never been less valuable. In an era where GMs hoard draft picks, you look at what day 3 picks have been doing the last couple of years, and you look at the quality of like early day 3 picks, we're just not getting the same talent coming out of the college ranks as we did 5, 10, 15 years ago.
It's what NIL has done to these guys' careers, right? In the sense that I'm not as desperate to get out of college and start making NFL money, because I'm maybe making pretty decent money as a junior in college at a middle ranked team in the NCAA. So we're not having the same kind of overwhelming underclassmen classes coming out, which is shallowing the depth of these draft classes. So I think that NIL has had an effect. It's found the effect has found its way up to the NFL, and I think it's the way it's reflecting is just kind of a general shallowing of these draft classes, and even more specifically the undrafted free agent classes, right? Because there's less of these guys kind of slipping through the cracks now that they're not just coming out desperate to try to make some kind of cash after being in a practically slave labor situation in the NCAA before the NIL rules changed.
Yeah, and I want to look specifically at the wide receiver position. You look at the guys that are coming out now that are either really old. We're talking about day 3, really old prospects or really young guys that have some like major immaturity concerns. For example, like a Tez Walker coming out of North Carolina, where North Carolina basically told him, hey, go pro. We don't want you anymore. Javon Baker, another one from UCF, who Alabama and Georgia basically told him, hey, get off our roster. Landon, you have 8 receivers that were drafted in the fourth round or top of the 5th round this year. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them have 2 or fewer yards on the season. Like, those guys aren't contributing at all. And this is not to try to make this Mingo trade look better. It's just that you're not getting the same talent in those rounds as we're accustomed to seeing.
I think we're kind of exiting an era in which, you would get just a unbelievable amount of I think specifically you mentioned it, wide receiver and maybe even quarterback talent coming out of these classes. Because there was the change in the 7-on-7 rules in high school and what that did to the supercharging of skill sets for these kids going into college as far as running routes and defending routes. I think that it had a similar effect with cornerbacks as well, right? And for a while we were kind of in the golden age of skill set drafts, right, where these guys come into college already skilled. They're ready to leave college and play snaps, pretty close, if not right away. And then there was a class beneath them of young guys that are hungry to get out. Now that you've got the NIL situation, it's allowed kids this option to stay in college a little bit longer to make more money. And ultimately all it does is it kind of spreads that out a little bit more. So the numbers are not quite, and I wouldn't be shocked if after a couple of years, it started to kind of build back up to where it was as things kind of even out. But as we're still kind of dealing with the chaos of the NIL, it's going to make for some very uneven draft classes, right? As 1 year we'll have a whole bunch of people coming out, and next year, you've got half a dozen juniors that in a normal year would come out, but because they're making $1 million or whatever it is in NIL money this year, they decided they'll wait an extra year to help their draft stock and make more money coming out. So it's just changed the angles on a lot of this stuff. And the results temporarily, at least right now, are that the draft classes are coming out a little bit shallower, especially in the wide receiver market, like you mentioned.
Last thing I want to mention, the Cowboys are projected to have 10 picks in next year's draft. Again, they don't lose the number of picks because they end up getting back a 7th. Obviously, the value is different, but they're going to need those picks to replenish the roster. But I'm telling you right now, 10 draft picks are not making the 2025 Dallas Cowboys roster, right? So if you can start to spread out those assets a little bit, we'll see. Now, if Mingo is a bad player and he gets cut by next year, it's a terrible trade. But if he comes in and he's your wide receiver 4 and he helps you out on special teams and you're able to kind of move some things around, I think that's how this works.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair expectation for what this should be, right? Is a guy that comes in as wide receiver 4, hopes to get some wide receiver 3 snaps. He's going to be a special teams player. Maybe he makes a big play for you later in the season. That those are all, fair goals to hope for this guy. And then the hope is that you give him an offseason and kind of continue to learn the wide receiver position. And then you get a different player coming into 2025.
Yeah.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And that winning $5 bet could be on an NBA matchup. Tonight, the Sixers head west to face the Clippers, and the spread is teeny tiny. FanDuel has the Clippers favored by just 1.5. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
So one superstar returns and one is going to not.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast.
So this is kind of what we've been waiting for, right? To see the effects that it will have on Joel Embiid after the altercation in the locker room. So right now, the Philadelphia 76ers, he has been suspended for 3 games in Joel Embiid. Keith, we've talked about this a little bit. There's no timetable on his return in terms of injury. So now Nick Nurse doesn't have to answer the injury question anymore. So that means at least maybe one NBA investigation will stop for the time being.
Yeah, it will stop for the time being. Now it's going to be kind of like, well, coach, how's Joel feeling? Does he feel good enough to serve a suspension yet? You know what I mean? It's crazy. Like, I mean, here's the thing. We knew it was going to happen, but at the same time, the Sixers did expect Joel to play on this trip, and it could have been as early as tomorrow. So, you know, I feel like if I'm the 76ers, I really want to get this thing started now. Like, okay, Joel Embiid is going to be suspended Wednesday, Friday, and then Sunday, and then we get him back for the Knicks game. Because here's the deal. I don't know if they could beat the Knicks without Joel Embiid right now. So if I'm the Sixers, I'll just basically get it over with and have them ramp up whatever you have to do. But basically, I'm letting them serve the suspension as soon as possible.
Yeah, you look at it too, and it says, okay, well, you could eventually have him back for the Knicks, right? Because you look at the Clippers, the Lakers, and then you go on and see the Hornets before New York. But then it brings in the question, is that going to be a game that you want to see Joel Embiid in going against Karl Anthony Towns in his first game back? Not really, but they're not going to win without Joel Embiid. I mean, Cat is just going to have a field day. You know, Gershon played really good last night, and I loved it, but he's not defending Cat, and Andre Drummond's probably going to get into some foul trouble. So Joel Embiid, I definitely think is the only way that they can win those games. But right now, when you look at it, do you feel like Nick Nurse is going to say, all right, well, bringing him back against the Knicks is just going to be way too risky, and, maybe he isn't 100%, or if he is, that's not the game you want to ramp him back up? Or is it, you know what, we need to win some basketball games, and this is the time to show him off? And the centers in the Eastern Conference, this is what we've all been waiting for, to see this matchup come up soon.
I think it's the latter. I think you have no other option, right? I feel like, Joel, unfortunately for him, and the crazy part, it is a back-to-back, right? So he's probably going to miss one. He's going to miss one of the two. So it's up to them, but I feel like you just don't have a choice. You don't. You basically forfeited that when you got suspended. Right about now, we're looking at the 76ers. They're 1-5. They have the second worst record in the Eastern Conference. They showed some improvement yesterday, but at the same time, you look at it, you need him to play. You really do. Now, again, they're both pretty good games, right? So no matter what, you look at it this way. So do you go up against Cat, a guy who he's dominated? And Cat is going to have an advantage because he played. But then the next night, you go up against the Twin Towers against Cleveland. So it's still kind of crazy, right? So, I mean, this is a crazy stretch. They're going to go up against the Knicks. We're bypassing these next 3 games. You can go up against the Knicks, then you have Cleveland, and then you go to Orlando against those young guys, and then you have Miami. So, with Bam, athletic. So, I just feel like right now, if you're Nick Nurse and you're the 76ers, you're like, bruh, I'm sorry, but Paul George had to come back against the Phoenix Suns. You got to come back against the Knicks.
And I think it's an interesting take you have there too, because when you look at it for Joel Embiid, not only are you looking to get him back as soon as possible with the suspension, but if he doesn't come back and all of a sudden you're waiting to have him active for games so he can serve that suspension, then how does the NBA look at it? Because they've already had an investigation of Nick Nurse making claims of not talking about Joel Embiid, and that was an issue for them to get fined. So when does the NBA step in and says, okay, well, he's progressing, now he has a suspension, but you're kind of withholding it, you're pushing it back, doesn't play those games. I just don't see in any type of world where that ends up good for the Philadelphia 76ers. They have 1 win and 2 NBA investigations. It is time to stop it, please. I cannot take it anymore. So I think that's what you have to do. And you don't want to rush the guy, but at the same time, you can use these 3 games to get him better before the NBA once again has to step in and say, all right, guys, what's going on here? Because you can't keep pushing this back.
Exactly. And let's keep it real too. Another thing is you can't keep pushing it back. But if you're saying that Joel Embiid, I talked to Nick Nurse on Sunday. Yeah. He said to me, ideally, we hope to have him back. That's the plan, to have him back this week, right, on this road trip. That's what they wanted, right? They said everything is going to plan. Now, we witnessed them go up against, before they played on Monday, they had the easiest schedule in the NBA, and they were 1-4. So now they're playing these elite teams, and you're going to tell me you're going to keep Joel out? Unfortunately for them, if they had to do it all over again, I think they would have hoped that Joel came back sooner, and that way he could have warmed up against these teams. But now it's about to get real, and they need him. They really need him. So, like you said, if he doesn't play, then the league is going to look at it. But if he doesn't play, that's going to hurt the Sixers from a competitive standpoint, because it goes from 3 games to actually 4, 5, maybe 6. So, you gotta just say, bro, you got to come back and play real rap.
And it's really crazy to think that this early in the season, we're saying you have to come back and play, but it happens to be now that the NBA is involved, now that you have the suspension, that adds a whole nother layer to everything. When you're having reports come out that he could possibly come back against the Clippers as early as that game or against the Lakers, you can't keep pushing it now till later than that. And I'm not somebody that wants to see Joel Embiid come back hurt. I want him to be 100% healthy before he comes back. But where do you draw the line? Because I would love to say that you could hold him until December, maybe, if he's going to be injured this whole time, but then you're not going to win basketball games, right? You're not going to win against a guy like AD down low. You're not going to win against a guy like Cat down low. You're just not. You are just not. So when you look at it now, it's not only saying, all right, we want him to be healthy. The NBA is going to come in. This is way too much drama. Then you could possibly lose draft picks if there's more investigations. It's just too much. This needs to happen. We need to see him play. So I think, I don't want to say it's a bad thing or a good thing that he got suspended, but I do say that, it gives him more time off. Maybe that's what he needed. And now you look at it and say he can come back. Fingers crossed, he will be 100% healthy.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And that winning $5 bet could be on an NBA matchup. Tonight, the Sixers head west to face the Clippers, and the spread is teeny tiny. FanDuel has the Clippers favored by just 1.5. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Shohei Ohtani got surgery.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I guess not the best news, but not the worst news. Shohei Ohtani was announced that he underwent surgery to repair a labrum tear in that left shoulder that he dislocated in Game 2 of the World Series. Whether the Dodgers knew about the labrum tear that night or at some point, I would imagine they knew about it, but just didn't want to reveal it, which they don't have to. It's not like the NFL where you have to put out, an injury report or anything like that. So Ohtani dealt with it. I would imagine the last 3 games of the series, it probably is why that he didn't have maybe as much success offensively as he could have if he didn't have a tear in his labrum in that left shoulder. But, all in all, it said that he still should be ready for spring training. It shouldn't hopefully affect his pitching too much, as it's not his non-throwing arm. But obviously with any shoulder surgery, you do worry a little bit about what could happen. But, Ohtani's proven to be a little bit different than some other guys.
Yeah, for sure. The things we know his shoulder injury wasn't as severe as Cody Bellinger's. Also, it's on his left arm, which is his back arm, not his pulling arm on the swing, which is good news. And yeah, it's not really a surprise that the Dodgers knew about this and kept it a secret. We found out just a few days ago that the Dodgers kept an entire injury of Freddie Freeman's secret and totally basically playing decoy. It's fun that Shohei Ohtani was a decoy. They needed the threat of his bat in the lineup. And so the best approach for the Dodgers was say Shohei's fine to play, put him out there batting leadoff. And, okay, he had a couple bad games. That happens sometimes. And the threat of Shohei, I think, did its job when, you go up there and, they didn't, it's not like they would have been better off saying, okay, we're going to put Chris Taylor at DH instead. That's having Shohei Ohtani there. There's a chance he's going to walk. There's a chance he's going to, I think just having Ohtani up there, the catcher's interference that led to Mookie's sac fly was, not that Ohtani caused that, but the catcher trying to steal every strike possible because it's Ohtani and everything. Having him in the lineup is a good thing. And so I wasn't really surprised to learn that there was structural damage. Obviously, he had imaging, I assume an MRI after, the day after the injury. And, not surprised that there was damage. But it's one of those things where, like was said at the time, it's a pain tolerance thing. Even if there is damage, we knew there was a potential for either the labrum or the rotator cuff to be injured with that kind of injury. But it came down to pain tolerance. It's not like he was going to hurt it worse or need more surgery. They knew he needed surgery. So play and then get the surgery when it's time.
Yeah. And then, shout out to the Dodgers because it was only 3 more games that Ohtani had to go through, having that hurt shoulder. So all in all, he's still reached base. He, still was, like you said, an active threat at the plate. I mean, even with one arm, Ohtani's probably more of an active threat than some other guys that not just on the Dodger roster, but on a lot of teams' rosters. So, ultimately it all worked out. You figured Ohtani shoulder was really bugging him the way he had to keep holding it, even when he was on base, the way, his swing just looked not as sharp as it had. I mean, not like he was tearing it up in the postseason, but the threat of him coming through wasn't as strong as it was in earlier games. But either way, like I said, it was more than enough at the top of that order and more than enough for the Dodgers. And, we just assume and hope that the recovery goes well. Like I said, the fact that it's not the front shoulder for him swinging, the fact that it's not his throwing shoulder shouldn't affect too much. And, I see people trying to compare it to Cody Bellinger and saying, Bellinger's swing never got right. Cody Bellinger's swing was never really right before. It was right a lot of the time in 2019, but other than that, it wasn't really that right. And his was a lot more mechanical than Ohtani's, which I would imagine he has no trouble getting back to.
Yeah, absolutely. Cody Bellinger in 2020, so the regular season before he hurt his arm, he had a 239 batting average, 789 OPS. Not nearly the MVP season he had the year before. It's totally different. Apples and oranges for sure. Even, subluxations and dislocations. They literally 2 different injuries. Bellinger's is much more severe. And the fact that we did see Ohtani running the bases, looking awkward, holding his jersey a few times, that means he was on base a few times after the injury, which means almost by definition, he was better than whoever they would have replaced him with.
Yeah, definitely. So, we wish him well in his recovery. The Dodgers have had, a few surgeries obviously during the season, now a couple surgeries here in the postseason, but, everything looks right for next year.